So majority of the state is sitting pretty good with moisture this year. The rains have been coming and they've been nice amounts. They've been a half inch here, an inch here, not just little tenths like they had been before. I think we already have more moisture this spring than what we had the last 2 years combined.
That's Dalton Wittmer, agronomist at IND Hemp in Montana. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Harlock, and today I will be talking to Dalton about hemp in Montana, what the conditions are like out there this year, how much they're planting, what it's like working with Montana farmers. Plus, we'll hear about hemp in his home state of Indiana. But first, a few words from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you in part by Impactful Ventures, an investment and incubation company focused on supporting startups and other initiatives that play a vital role in mitigating the adverse effects of climate change. At Impactful Ventures, they strive to amplify enterprises that bring innovative, green opportunities to the forefront and empower those making a significant impact for a sustainable future. You can learn more at impactfulventures.org.
Hey, it's Greg Wilson from Hempwood in Murray, Kentucky. We support the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast, and you can check us out at hempwood.com. Have a great day.
Okay, welcome back. So this week's show was actually recorded last week. All right, I'm on vacation this week. So I don't have any fresh news nuggets for you this week because they haven't happened yet. So I appreciate your understanding there. Anyway, so I had this conversation with Dalton Wittmer, the agronomist at IND Hemp in Montana, but this conversation took place in Indiana. Well, he was in Indiana, I was in Pennsylvania, and through the magic of technology, we had this conversation. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. So yeah, we'll just roll the tape. Hey Jimmy, roll the tape. Dalton Wittmer, agronomist for IND Hemp out there in Montana. Welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Eric. I'm doing well today, just enjoying a little bit of a break here in Indiana. Got some work that we are planning to do for IND Hemp over in this neck of the woods. A little different than Montana, of course, but we're pretty diverse and spread out to a couple different regions. So that's what I'm doing here, hoping to get some stuff accomplished this week and get back out to Montana and figure out how our crop's looking out there.
Yeah, cool. Well, why don't you give us a quick introduction of yourself, where you're from, your background, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I'm Dalton Wittmer. I'm the agronomist for IND Hemp. I'm originally from Indiana. I went to Purdue University for agronomy and got a job out with IND Hemp in Montana here about a year and a half ago to 2 years ago. Started with them and just trying to, figure this whole hemp thing out and see what kind of industry it really is and where we can take it. So,
right on. Well, how did you first get interested in industrial hemp? Like, were you interested in hemp before you found IND, or tell me how that came together?
Yeah. So I was fortunate enough that my advisor in college was the lead researcher for hemp at Purdue. So, talking with them a little bit, it was something that was coming about. It just got, I think, federally legalized back in 17 or 18. And that's when I was going through school. And, they started to implement some hemp courses into the curriculum or something we could take if it was of interest. And being that my advisor was, the lead researcher for the hemp, I had chatted with him a little bit about it, and he kind of piqued my interest in it. And it was a cool industry with a lot of potential. And, it's different. It's not something that was really accepted so much, I think, from people. And, there's definitely a stigma around it. And we're trying to break that and, bring the good of hemp to America or just across the world, because it is something that is useful and resourceful for a lot of people and could help a lot of lot of things out, from people to environment to, you can just keep knocking stuff off. So
Right, right. Was that stigma an issue for you at all, or was that something you just easily got over?
no, it wasn't for me because, I like I like a little bit of doubt from people. I feel like that strives, makes me push a little harder to do something. And when somebody says you can't or it won't work, that's not a good thing to tell me, I feel like. So
Cool. So tell me about growing up in Indiana. You grew up on a farm?
yeah, so grew up on a little family farm. My grandpa, he actually had sold our farm back in, or sold off all the equipment and all the livestock we had back in the 80s. Didn't sell the ground, so we leased our farm out for row cropping. But I worked on a farm since I was, I think, 12. And just been around livestock, cattle, pigs, a little bit of turkeys, and just row cropping corn and soybeans, mainly. So
Okay.
I've had a pretty good learning experience on the farm, I would say. I've done it even through college. I helped out on the farm working when I had free time in summers and whatnot. So it's what I know and what I enjoy. So
All right. So when you were going through school for agronomy, what was there an area of like specialization?
no, no, there was not. I had thought about, looking into like genetics. That was something of interest to me. But I just went straight for the 4 year, bachelor's degree, soil and science, and got out of there and got done because I didn't go to college till I was 23. And by that point, I think I was ready to be done once I'd started to, and got it over with. And now I'm not saying I would never go back, but it doesn't really pique my interest too much. I think I got
Yeah.
enough to learn here. I can figure it out. So
Right. You can probably learn more on the
yeah,
ground,
yeah.
through experience than you can in school, maybe.
That's the way I kind of feel, especially in this industry that we're in, I guess, right now.
Yep. Well, let's talk about what's happening up there in Montana, and then we can talk about some of the other projects you
Yeah.
have around the country. But so first, let's just talk about the weather. What's happening up there weather-wise? Is it better this year than it's been? I know there's been some droughts. There's been some grasshoppers. What's it like
Yeah.
this year?
So majority of the state is sitting pretty good with moisture this year. The rains have been coming and they've been nice amounts. They've been a half inch here, an inch here, not just little tenths like they had been before. I think we already have more moisture this spring than what we had the last 2 years combined. So, the hemp, I know there have been some people that are listening that have been up to the hemp summit. This would be a good year to come check a hemp crop out because you can see its full potential and what it is capable of actually doing. We've had good success in those last couple of years, and with all the environmental factors and stress factors against hemp, and it's still turned out, fairly reasonable, what I would say.
Mhm.
This year, I really think we're on a roll to have a very successful crop. So, we'll see what happens as long as we can keep the grasshoppers at bay, which they've been pretty controlled. There's a few regions that have a little heavier pressure, but nothing like it had been. And then of course the hail, if we can keep the hail away from us. So
Right,
that's
right.
we've made it through I think the grasshoppers for a little bit, but the hail's definitely worrisome because it
Mhm.
gets pretty severe hailstorms out in that part of the world.
And that'll just knock your crop down, and it's unusable at that point, right?
Yeah, and we've had the crop get totally hailed out, but then we've also had the crop get totally hailed out from an adjuster standpoint. But it didn't break it off below the first node, and those plants shot back up and actually produced seed, and we harvested a crop off of it after
Oh,
it got hailed out.
there you go. Silver lining. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep. So
that's
it's,
cool.
it's very tolerant to a lot of stress, but if you just don't knock it all the way flat, 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 it'll be all right. It'll come out of it, which is pretty remarkable that the crop has the capability to come back after something like that.
That's cool. All right. So, how many farmers are you working with?
This year, I believe we have 25 to 30 farmers, roughly 7,000 acres worth
Okay.
of hemp.
Is that in Montana or is that spread out the whole?
90% of that is in Montana.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the breakdown between like dry land and irrigated?
So actually we got about a 50-50 split this year.
Okay.
Both for grain production and single purpose fiber production. That was something that with the dryness that I had seen out there, that was kind of a focus of mine this year, was try to get something that was a little less risky. And of course, out there, less risky is irrigated ground. So that was a push for me and us as a company to try to strive to get as much lower risk acres as possible.
Right.
So, we got a 50-50 mix of dry land and irrigated. And, right now the dry land's looking just as good as the irrigated. So I'm happy about it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How about the breakdown between the dual crop and the fiber?
Yeah. So this year I think we are going to be harvesting about 5,000 acres of dual purpose crop or grain hemp, whichever you would like to call it, and right at 2,000 acres of single purpose fiber hemp. We're pretty congregated in the area. It's not so spread out this year as what we had been in the past.
Okay.
I'm trying to fine tune that just for economic reasons for both the farmer and us.
Yeah. Right. That way you're not
Try to
driving
get
all
that
over
cost.
that state.
Yeah, because
out.
out here everywhere is 2 hours away. It doesn't matter where you go; it's 2 hours. So if we could keep my thing is if we can keep stuff within 4 hours of us, that's where you're going to be successful on our end and on the farmer's end of things.
Okay.
So,
is there a reason why the growers who are just growing the single purpose fiber crop aren't growing the dual purpose grain?
So a lot of the reason why is they don't have the storage capability that they need for the grain side of it. That kind of takes a certain aeration in the bin. Right. And out in that region of the world, that's not a common thing to have. They don't need it with their crops that they typically grow out there. That, and then also, we have a custom harvest crew where we come around and we harvest all the fiber hemp on IND's time and money. We have the equipment to do it. So I think between that and then it's just a little less work for them at the end of the day, being they don't have to harvest it and deal with it when it's time to cut it down. I think that goes a long way to the farmer, especially on a crop, if they're trying it out for the first time.
Right. What are these guys like normally growing? Are these like wheat guys?
Yeah, these are, wheat, barley, canola. That's the main crops that they're growing. You'll get a few guys that'll try some crazy stuff here and there. And I don't mind working with those guys because, hemp to a lot of them is a crazy thing. So it seems like they're more intrigued to try it out. But yeah, no, corn, grain and oil seeds is the main crops. So,
right. Are they seeing like success with hemp going in after a certain crop?
So that's something that I've tried to look into a little bit, and the crop following hemp. I want to see, what best performs after it. And we have heard that, the wheat following hemp or barley following hemp is some of the best wheat or barley that those farmers have ever got to harvest. So I think hemp does influence something. Don't know what yet. We need more research and more time doing it to really fine tune the reasons. But it's definitely showing a greater success following hemp with wheat or barley.
Okay. And then, so I imagine the dual purpose growers are doing the X59?
Yes.
And then what other varieties are you planting up there?
So we've this year we have, I think, 6 or 8 varieties out on the dual purpose side of things. Pretty big acreage wise, because everything out there is not small. If you're going to do something, it has to be 20 to 40 acres worth when you're in a field that's 600 acres, and just the drills and changing everything around. So we have some pretty good size representative plots out there, I would say. Just kind of spread out in all the different regions that we're focusing on, trying to figure out, where it's best suited for and if it does even work there. So far, I think we got some hanola that's looking very promising. Some fanola is looking very promising as well. And then there is a French varietal. It's called Erlina 8FC. Don't know how it's going to turn out so much, but that's something of interest. But the hanola and the fanola are looking very well. From what I have gathered, X59 is a stronger seed, getting up and going, just more vigorous. Everywhere we've been in all those trials, it's outperformed them at the beginning. Now at the end of the day, I don't know what's going to happen, but at the beginning of it, X59 is just a stronger, more vigorous seedling.
And that's been in production for a lot longer than these other varieties here in the U.S. anyway, right? 'Cause
Yeah, I
that
think
comes
it's
out of
more
Canada.
developed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more developed. I think it's like 28 to 30 years old, that variety is. So, and Fanola is the next one behind that. It's what Canada has been using after they'd used X59. And it seems to be pretty strong variety so far. It's a little shorter, and that I know is something of interest to the farmers out here. They don't want to harvest that big tall crop. They're not used to harvesting a big tall crop. They don't want to do it. And that's understandable. We're going to have farmers in different regions that are okay with it and aren't. So we need to be able to pivot to, their needs with a variety if they want to grow hemp. And that's what we're looking to try to figure out, if it's a viable option for out here.
That's cool. Like meet them where they are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What kind of I don't know if problems is the right word, but what kind of things are you finding? What are you helping the growers with?
Yeah. So something that I think could be really useful, and there needs to be more knowledge in as an industry as a whole, is some chemicals. And I'm not saying chemicals that need to be used within the crop season, but rotation and what you can follow hemp behind. So let's say a chemical has a residual of 12 months or 18 months. Well, hemp's not on any label, of course. So you just base it off of what it says, broadleaf, or we kind of base it off of what it does to canola. Well, hemp's neither one. It is a broadleaf, but it's not canola, and it's not just a normal broadleaf. So it's risky to go in behind that and say, yeah, the herbicide's not going to hurt anything. Well, there's not enough, I don't think, knowledge out there and research done to see what herbicides hemp can tolerate and how much it can tolerate. If it's going to hurt if we can plant it 10 months instead of 12 months, do we have to wait that full plant back date to plant the hemp? I think that'd be useful for people, because it is worrisome, especially on my end as well, because I don't know, and there's not been enough of it out there, study wise or research wise, to find a paper to see if it works. So it's just trial and error kind of thing, I guess. And I think that's something that could really push the industry forward, is knowing a little bit more of that, as well as, yes, I do, hemp can outcompete about any weed in our region, where we're at in Montana. I'm not saying it's going to do it down here in the Midwest or elsewhere, but that stuff canopies over pretty quick. If you put it in the ground the right day, everything's correct, it'll outcompete any weed we have out in Montana. We haven't sprayed anything in season. We don't have any weeds in the fields, in our grain fields. 28 days after seeding the crop, we had canopy closure and there wasn't a single weed in the field. So it's pretty remarkable what it can do without a herbicide protection plan, but it would be nice to have that set up in case you did need to take action.
Right. Tell me a bit about the stuff that's happening out of Montana. You said you've got some projects there down in Indiana.
Yep. So the variety that IND owns, I believe it is called IH Williams or SS Beta, either one. I think both of those names get thrown around out there. Up in Montana, it is our single purpose fiber variety. That's what we grow it for up there. It will not go to seed. in Montana. It does, I guess, but it's very late and you just can't produce viable seed off of it. So we started last year propagating that variety and moving it south is what we did to see if it would help with flowering and producing good seed. And we had a successful crop last year down in Kansas, which we have another one there this year as well. And we wanted to try it in Indiana just because it's similar latitude, a little better growing conditions down here. They get a little bit more water. And it's maybe where I'm from too. So I wanted to see if it'll work. So yeah, we're gonna be here this week. Pretty cool way we're doing it, I feel. It's going to be double cropped behind a winter wheat stand. So we're harvesting actually the winter wheat today after I get off of this. Going to get it all prepped, and then we should be seeding the hemp into it Thursday or Friday. Going to be doing it on 15-inch row spacing, which in some no-till wheat, so wheat stubble. So it'll be pretty neat to see how it turns out. I think that's going to really help with weed pressure out here. We fight a little bit more aggressive weeds in this part of the world than what they do out in Montana. So that's our method of mitigating those weeds. We're going to see if it works, and then there is a herbicide or chemistry that has been approved for hemp. It's called sonolin. It is a post-plant pre-emergent, mainly for broadleafs. It can control little grasses too, but broadleafs are our biggest problem out in this region of the world. So hopefully between those two things, we can keep the weeds at bay and get the hemp off to a solid start. So
Okay. So is there a lot of hemp growing now in Indiana? And how did you find the farmers that you're working with down there?
There is some hemp growing here in the state. It's more northern, and I think it is more for CBD production. That's been my knowledge of their focus here. So I found these guys. They're just some family friends of mine, and down right here, real close to where I'm from. Some of the more innovative farmers, I think, in the region, and they like playing around. They do a lot of specialty crops, unlike everybody else here where we're at. So I was like, I'm gonna go to them and see. They're willing to try something different and do something new. And I was like, that's the type of people I want to work with. I feel like, and
What was that initial conversation like?
well, they had actually grown hemp before, so it wasn't, it went pretty smoothly. They, as soon as I asked them about it, they were all intrigued and excited. They wanted to know more about it and when they could do it, and I guess what the purpose of it was. And it's pretty easy to convince people here. I think it's easier to convince people here to grow it than it is to convince people out there in Montana to grow it.
Why is that?
They're wheat farmers and just wheat farmers. I can't say that, but they like growing wheat. That's what makes them their money, and they know that. And stubbornness, maybe a little bit. I don't know. Maybe not put that in there, but
Too late, it's in there. That's a good thing, though. Some of my favorite people in the world are very stubborn.
It is, and it's good to have that too, because they push back against you, and you really have to. I feel like you have to speak knowledgeable, and they want you to prove what it's capable of and what it can do before they're ever going to even think about doing it. And they, if they can go out, and they're people that have to see it before they do it too.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, I don't blame a guy. That's their livelihood, that they're putting at risk with it. So, it's a different world than here, a lot different. But the people are great out there and easy to work with. And, it's been a welcoming place, a very welcoming place.
Cool. When you brought the hemp back to Indiana, did you get any pushback from your family or community? What do you do? Because this, we talked about the stigma. Did that freak people out, or?
No, my grandpa, he's pretty old school, and I think he's 89 actually, and that would have been the only person I really would have cared or worried about having push back against it or thinking that wasn't right. But, he's supportive of me. He's actually been one of my biggest supporters. I was very surprised by it. And, but he's also back. He was alive during the time when it used to be used and used to be grown. So he knows what hemp is and he knows what marijuana is. And it's two different things. And, he supports it because he knows that the good that it can bring and the things you can make out of it. And, it brings just more diversity to farmers and gives them an opportunity to have a backup plan because, corn ain't always going to be $6 a bushel or $8 or whatever, and beans and this and that. And, there comes a time where you're going to have to change a little bit of things up and diversify your rotation because weeds, they're very smart. Weeds are very, very smart.
Always one step ahead.
There's the same problems everywhere, but it's always a different weed. And without having, that rotation in there, I think hemp can benefit being it's a crop that really doesn't take any herbicides. So if you can have a whole year that you're laying off of that, I just think that gives the weeds a little less chance to get smart.
Oh, there you go. I like that. So what's it been like living in Montana? Was that a big adjustment for you?
Well, I'm an outdoors person. I that's my happy place. And Montana, you have anything outdoors you could ever imagine. And heck, it's right outside my living room window. I get to see antelope, mule deer, moose, anything, bears, whatever it is. And I just live out on the prairie, I don't even live up in the mountains.
Are you close to Fort Benton?
Yeah, I just live right up kind of over town.
Okay.
I got a good view of the mountains out there south of town and kind of over the river and the view of the town. So it's a nice view. The views are immaculate out there. Plenty of outdoor things to do. So that part of it's been really easy for me, but not knowing anybody, my family's all from back in the Midwest. So that part of it's been a little difficult. But like I said, the people are just super welcoming and super friendly. They kind of made me part of their family in a way, and it's been good. I miss my family, of course, but I think I'll stick out there for a couple more years. It hasn't ruined me yet, I guess I'll say that. So it's been good. I enjoy it. It's a cool place, and I'd recommend anybody ever going out to check it out.
Yeah,
so.
I've spent some time in Fort Benton now. I guess I've been there twice, 2 summers in a row. Heading back this year for the Montana Hemp Summit in July. And yeah, that river, the Missouri River running through the town, it's just so good. Have you spent time on the river?
Oh yeah, I've done quite a bit of fishing, a lot of floating down the river.
Yeah.
This year it's full. I mean, it's full.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's you're talking about it flowing down through there. I mean, it's rushing down through there right now.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yep.
Ken Elliott took me and my wife and kids on a float down the Missouri when we were there a couple summers ago. And yeah, I was surprised by how fast it was moving them. It's a big river. It's wide. It's pretty deep,
Yep.
And yeah, it was powerful.
Yeah, that's a lot of force going down those rivers. And that's the thing, even the smaller rivers, they get full. I mean, I don't know if it's the latitude or what it is. They're running at such an angle, but those things get a lot of water moving down through them.
Yeah, it's all coming down from the mountains somewhere, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Tell me about some of the individual farmers that you're working with.
Yeah, so I feel like we have some of the greatest farmers in the hemp industry. They're very pivotal. Their willingness to learn and take advice from me because and I'm no expert in it by any means. I have a bunch to learn. But when they're so used to hearing nothing other than cereal grain, it just doesn't, it doesn't work like it does in cereal grains for hemp, I'd say. Just a little bit different practice and mindsets. So, the guys that I get to work with, they're like I said, willing to listen and change a little bit of their management or practices that they have done on other crops to try to fine tune it for hemp, because they know it's a different crop and it's not going to be able to be farmed the same way as all their others. What I like about them is the stubborn part. When they know I'm wrong or they don't agree with it, they'll just straight up say it. They know, well, this or that. Those say, no, I don't agree with you. And I like the pushback a little bit because it makes me think a little bit about what I said and, well, was that right or was it wrong? And they're great. I like I said, I think we have some of the best farmers in the nation that we get to work with. So I'm very pleased with that. And it's been good, being new in the area and new in hemp that, they've been helpful. And like I said, the welcoming, just friendly, some of the friendliest people I've ever met out in Montana, 100%.
All right. And IND Hemp, the company is growing too, right? Like that.
Yes. Yeah. So, I think we are up to like 45 or 50 people that we employ. We are definitely trying to hire a whole new production shift in both of our facilities, in our oilseed crushing facility as well as our decortication. That's going to be a little tough, I think, to find. Just living situations out there are pretty hard to come by right now. But they're looking to expand, and I think they're looking to expand, to maybe some other states as well. So,
okay. But if people are out there listening and they want to change their lives, they can go get a job in Montana.
Yeah. If you want to come out to Montana, there's definitely positions open from agronomy all the way to production lead in the facilities. So just get on indhemp.com and check out employee opportunities. So
there you go. I guess it's a good time to also mention that IND Hemp has been one of our main supporters of this podcast over the past few years. So I appreciate that. But even if you guys weren't a sponsor of the show, I would still be covering what you're doing because, IND Hemp's making it happen out there. And it's been just inspiring to see, Ken and Morgan and just put this thing together and then bring like the larger national and international hemp community together. It's so very inspiring, and I feel very lucky to be, a part of it in a small way. So,
well, we're happy with things that you do, getting people in the industry on and talking a little bit about it, because everybody has different ideas, and it's good to throw one off of one another, I feel like. And that's the only way you get places. You pass ideas around. So,
yeah, cool. Well, that's what we're doing. I appreciate your time today, Dalton. And I know you have you're cutting wheat today. Is that what you said? You cutting some winter wheat?
Yep.
All right. Well, I'll let you get back to it. And thanks, man. I guess I'll see you out in Montana next month.
All right. Well, I'll see you in July, Eric. It was nice meeting you, and I'll look forward to seeing you then. You take care.
All right. There you go. That's Dalton Wittmer, agronomist at IND Hemp. And before we go today, I'm going to share something from our archives. So I've been publishing the show since August of 2018, and in June of 2019, it was the 10th anniversary of Hemp History Week, but I think now June is just Hemp History Month. So I'm going to replay this audio from back then. It was like my 3 favorite moments from the history of hemp. So I hope you enjoy this. It's Hemp History Week here, not just on the podcast, but all over the world. It's the 10th annual Hemp History Week. This year it's June 3rd through June 9th, so happy Hemp History Week. And I thought I would take this occasion to share some interesting moments in the history of hemp. Now, obviously, hemp has a really long and old history, and an even older prehistory. This plant has been around forever. So I thought I would just focus on a few key things from the 20th century, which was a very tumultuous time for the hemp plant, to say the least. Okay, so my first moment from 20th century hemp history is July 1st, 1919, just about 100 years ago. This is the date on the top of the patent that was granted to George W. Schlichten for his decorticator machine, a machine that he invented to make it easier to process fiber-bearing plants, hemp especially. This machine apparently cut the labor costs of processing hemp stalks by something like a factor of 100. So Schlichten was born in Germany. He was living in New York State, and he put a bunch of his own money into making this machine. He applied for the patent in 1916 and was able to produce excellent hemp fiber. And of course, the machine had a byproduct called hurd, which Schlichten knew, and you know too, can be made into paper. World War I was in progress, and U.S. newspapers were experiencing a shortage of wood pulp. And that's where Schlichten saw his opening. He wanted to find a newspaper company that would finance the manufacturing of paper from the hemp hurds. He gave this presentation to some newspaper guys. He talked about the environmental impacts of deforestation, and he almost had them convinced, but ultimately he was denied the chance, and he and his machine faded into obscurity. Now, this story might be the root of those accepted theories that industry was threatened by hemp and therefore squashed the hemp industry. The paper industry, textile, oil industry, the synthetic fiber industry. So, anyway, George W. Schlichten. Okay, next up is D-Day. June 6, 1944, 75 years ago tomorrow. The Allied forces of the United States, Britain, and Canada began the invasion of Normandy. And you could argue that the fate of the world hinged on the success of this invasion. And it ultimately led to the defeat of the Nazis. But what does this have to do with hemp?
Rope for marine rigging and towing, for hay forks, derricks, and heavy-duty tackle.
Well, hemp played a supporting role, thanks to the Hemp for Victory program that the U.S. government had undertaken 2 years prior, where they encouraged American farmers to grow hundreds of thousands of acres of hemp for the war effort. See, the Japanese had captured the Philippines and cut off America's supply of Manila hemp, so the American farmers had to step up. And this hemp was used by the military in everything from rope rigging on ships to threads for the shoes for the soldiers to the webbing on the parachutes for the paratroopers. They say that every battleship required 34,000 feet of rope. So you can see hemp played a supporting role even on D-Day. And let's not forget the more than 9,000 Allied soldiers who were killed or wounded that day on those beaches 75 years ago. Okay, and on a much lighter note, my last hemp history nugget takes place on August 28, 1964, in New York City at the Delmonica Hotel, where John, Paul, George, and Ringo were staying. They had a visit from a folk singer from Minnesota, a guy named Bob Dylan, who proceeded to introduce the Beatles to marijuana, thereby changing the course of music forever. Apparently, under the right circumstances, THC hemp can have profound musical consequences. And so the story goes that Bob was under the impression that the Beatles had already been introduced to marijuana, mostly because of the lyrics to the song I Want to Hold Your Hand. The Beatles are singing, I can't hide, but Dylan thought they were singing, I get high, I get high. Well, I guess you can blame it on a simple twist of fate. Happy Hemp History Week, everybody. All right, there you go. Wow, that was just 4 years ago. It feels like a lifetime ago. So much has changed in the world, in the hemp industry since the summer of 2019. But I have really enjoyed covering the industry and getting to know the people in it and, playing a very small role in the development of this industry. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's show. And just a heads up, I don't think there's going to be an episode next week. So we'll see you, I guess, the second week of July. All right. My name is Eric Herlock. I'm the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper. You can always get in touch with me. Send an email directly to me, podcast@lancasterfarming.com. And be sure to check out our website, lancasterfarming.com. Get yourself a subscription to our print newspaper. You will love it. All right. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, I will see you in the newspaper.
industrial hemp.
This episode of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2023 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show is written, recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Harlock, and the music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tinbird Shadow.